Welcome to Empty Bowls 2021, a pop art virtual event presented by Union Bank. I'm Kym Dildine.
And I'm Natalie Caples, and we're the co-CEOs at Central California Food Bank.
We're rounding out our first year of leadership. And wow, what a year. No one could have expected what the pandemic would have brought. But we couldn't have anticipated the incredible generosity of you, our supporters. You helped us level up as our lines exploded with need. Because of your generosity, we brought on new programs and services that we'd only dreamt about before.
Yes, Kim, that is exactly right. Neighbors that were already experiencing hunger were left even more vulnerable because of the pandemic. But because of support like yours, we were able to implement programs to meet their needs. In May of 2020, we started Groceries to Go, an appointment-based grocery pickup program that helped us meet the need of immunocompromised individuals and families that couldn't access the traditional emergency food network. We partnered with schools to feed children who were home distance learning and didn't have access to free and reduced meals. And we started a Heart Healthy box for seniors to be able to meet their needs. All of these programs really do make a difference in the lives of the individuals that we're feeding, just like our very own Tristan, which you'll hear from next.
Up until I was about maybe 5 or 6, had a pretty normal childhood from what I can remember. We had a house we were renting, trampoline in the back. Wasn't until I think I hit about first grade, we got evicted from our house, and I didn't really understand at the time why. I just knew we had to move. Kind of in between a couple of places until my dad's friend basically gave him a 20-foot travel trailer. So we moved to a small town called Forest Hill, about 60 miles outside of Sacramento. That was kind of my first inclination that something wasn't quite right with childhood and things like that, but my dad was really good about making it seem okay. I don't think it was until I was about in 6th grade that I really recognized that we were getting some type of assistance and that things, were kind of bad. I do remember a lot of distributions in Forest Hill. There was a nice food pantry up there that I didn't know it at the time, but they do weekly distributions on Friday, and my dad would come home with a shopping bag full of goodies and some things for the next week. When I was in 6th grade, I pretty vividly remember we were kicked out of the place we were staying at, no longer had the travel trailer in workable condition for us to live in. So we were actually living in a friend's house, her parents' house. The house had been sold. It was currently in escrow and we were living in it, and so the new owners could burst through the front door at any time with the keys and say, "What are you guys doing here?" But I vividly remember for months we would go to the local gas station by our house and remember scraping change off of the floors of my dad's car and, wherever else we could try and find change out of, change jars we had that we kept, because they always had 2 for 50-cent hot dogs. So we had that for quite a few months in a row. And I remember one day we went in and I knew what we had in my pocket wasn't enough for both of us. And so I went and made my hot dog, and I went to look back to see what my dad was doing, and he was following me, not making his, and just said, "Let's go check out." And I said, "Well, what about your dinner?" And he said, "I'll be fine, you eat." And so that was really a moment for me where I realized that my dad went without a lot to make sure that I could have something. So my journey with the food bank started probably 5 or 6 years ago as an IT consultant. I was just starting my job at the time, and so coming in and working with you guys was more of a task and a job than something meaningful. And as I worked with you guys and got to see the organization and I got to kind of dip my fingers in the technology side of things and how that could excel the company into the future, I kind of started to realize that this is where all of my help came from, places like this. So it means a lot to me working here now full time. I get pretty emotional sometimes in hearing the stories across the community and how we're impacting people's lives. And even sometimes just walking through this warehouse, I see pallets moved back and forth, I see food being loaded and things like that, and just knowing deep down that it's going to someplace that's really needful of it, it does touch a pretty deep place in my heart. It's one thing to really enjoy what you do. I love IT with all my heart. It's been something that's been in my life since I was in high school. I built my own computer in high school. But it's a completely other dynamic when you love the place you work for. And I really get that here. You just get a sense of we're here to help. And so just learning that dynamic with everyone, that I think learning how to be that type of person, I think is what I want to take away from working here.
Thank you, Tristan, for sharing your story and helping us put a face to hunger. We'd like to ask all of you to consider becoming a monthly sustaining donor. You've heard about the new programs and services that we've brought on in response to the pandemic, and the need isn't going away. Your generous support helps us continue these programs long into the future for our most vulnerable neighbors.
To become a monthly sustaining donor, please click the link below. And please enjoy your time tonight with Josh and Hillary. Get creative, have fun as you're making your bowls, but also remember those that have empty bowls this evening.
Thank you again to our presenting sponsor, Union Bank, our gold sponsors, Golden One Credit Union, Westlands Water District, and Zenith Insurance.
Hello everybody, I'm Josh.
And I'm Hillary.
So today we are going to be working with you and showing you how to make your very own pop art inspired bowl with the bowls and art supplies that came in your kit.
But before we get started, we want to give you a little bit of background about pop art, some inspiration, and go over what you need before we start creating.
So what is pop art?
So pop art is a movement that began in the 1950s, and Americans were enjoying a post-war economy. The color television was starting to be sold in homes, and people were just being flooded with all this colorful imagery and new products to consume.
So in a lot of ways, pop art was this pushback from the art movement that was happening right before, where critics were celebrating something that was called abstract expressionism. Artists like Jackson Pollock, William de Kooning, Mark Rothko were painting works that were meant to have more of an emotional response, painting from what the subconscious is how they would put it. And it was very polarizing, and so pop art was a pushback from that.
So, in contrast, pop artists like Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, Jim Dine, Andy Warhol, of course, and Roy Lichtenstein, who we're going to talk about today, they were using found imagery and found objects and colors that were taking their cues from what was going on in the world around them. They were using ideas of irony and kitsch to express everyday life.
Pop art, in a lot of ways, was something that was enjoyed by a lot more people. It was a way more open than the previous art movement. It was something that can tap into all sorts of socioeconomic classes, where you have, an example would be like a Coca-Cola label that would be painted by Andy Warhol. Well, you didn't have to be wealthy or poor to know what that is. Everybody knew what a Coca-Cola bottle was. So it was really focused on things that were enjoyed by or known by all classes of people.
So, Roy Lichtenstein, who we're going to talk about today, is thought to be the father of pop art. He painted blown-up comic book clips. He used bright colors, still lifes, mechanically reproduced backgrounds, and a limited color palette that took its cues from his graphic design background.
So, in our bowls today, we are going to be using a lot of primary colors. Now, Roy Lichtenstein used a lot of primary colors in his work. I mean, he would often, when you would paint a subject, he would, I would call it, rounding up to the nearest primary color. So if he was painting an orange, then that orange would then be
like this.
Yellow. Oh, there you go. And if he was painting grapes, instead of purple, he would paint them blue. So there was a big focus on primary colors. The other part was the backgrounds and the lines were very bold and black, and even the backgrounds were more geometric. And that was kind of an homage to his graphic design background.
So we're going to show you a few paintings that we were inspired by to create these bowls. You can make your bowls off of whatever you like to. These are just some ideas. At any point in this video, you can pause the video so you can use it to look at while you're doing your painting. Let's get started. All right, what we have here are your supplies for painting your bowl today. What we have, here are some samples of using the polka dots on this bowl with the inside is blue. And here's another sample that's Liechtenstein inspired with some of the fruit. So before you get started on painting, you want to make sure you have all your pieces out, all your things out. We gave you this little, you might want to have some scissors at home. We gave you this little guide. You want to have your brushes, a pencil, Q-tips, your paint, and your bowl, of course. And you can also have some tape, some Scotch tape or some painter's tape, whatever you have at home. And you want to have some paper towels nearby. I would recommend putting something down on your surface before getting started.
So at this point, you will start cutting out your objects. And you can do this freehand if you want. But what I like to do is cut it and then cut out the individual shapes, because it makes it a lot easier to tape to the size of the bowl if it's a lot smaller.
So after I've cut out all the pieces from the sheet, I'm going to make a plan about what I want to put where, so I can try it out and see where I think it'll look good. And then I'm going to do a graphite transfer. We're going to color on the back side of the piece of paper, and that's going to just be putting graphite on the back that you're going to then be able to transfer onto the bowl. You want to make sure it's really well colored. I like to color it both ways so that there's a lot of graphite that can go onto the bowl. Once it's all colored in, I'm going to take a piece of tape, or you could just hold it there with your fingers. I'm going to look at where I want to place it on the bowl. Tape it on one side just to keep it in place so it doesn't shift around. And then I'm going to press with my sharpened pencil along the lines. I'm just tracing the black lines that are already there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to make sure you use a good amount of pressure. And you can check it while you're doing it. And it's going to be hard to see in this video, but it leaves a really light transfer of that image onto the bowl. Now I'm going to show you how to create this line that goes all the way around the bowl. It'll separate your background from your foreground if you like the look of that. You just take an extra piece of paper from the printout that we gave you and figure out how wide you want it to be, how far down you want it to be from the edge. And then you line it up to the top edge of the bowl. It essentially creates a flexible ruler for you to trace the line with. You want to go lightly with the pencil all the way around the bowl and leave out the areas when you get to the fruit or images that you want sitting on top of the bowl. You want that line to be a little bit above where the fruit is so it looks like it's sitting on a table. After you get all of your drawing done on the bowl, go around and check everything out. You can see you have your fruit drawn on there. You can give it a brush. If you went back and traced it, there might be too much graphite on there. It'll just look dirty. So you can just go back with the eraser and clean it up before you get started painting.
At this point, we're going to move towards the background. Now, if you feel comfortable, you can do this freehand, but we provided a template for you to work on, and you can use the same graphite transfer as you did with the fruit. And in this process, you will want to line it up to the top of the bowl and make sure the dots are going perpendicular to the top of the bowl. And you want to line it up as straight as possible. This is when you will start filling it in with the pencil. You'll color over some of the dots just to get the pattern down. You're not going to be doing this method over the whole bowl. Once you get the idea of the pattern, then it's time for the paint.
To paint your dots, you're going to use your Q-tip. You want to swish it in a little bit of water just to get the fuzzies off of it, and then dip it in the paint color that you want to use. You want to make sure whatever paint color you use for the dots is fully mixed before you get going. Make sure there's no little bits of cotton coming off of your Q-tip. And then you're going to essentially be making a stamp with the end of the Q-tip. So you want to work from left to right so that you're not running into your hand as you're working. And you'll probably do about half of the bowl first and then set it down and let it dry and come back. So you want to make sure you're starting with a nice vertical line going from top to bottom, and then each row after that you're going to offset, sort of like lane bricks. And you want to try to keep the spacing for each dot really even and the spacing between each row really even. And that's what we did the graphite transfer of the dots for. You really just needed that to start you out, and then you should get the hang of the spacing after that if you're using that nice vertical row as your guide. When you get to the shapes that you've outlined, you want to kind of go around them. So you're going to keep doing your vertical rows and just imagine where they would be going behind the shape. Just kind of work around them. It's okay if it's not perfect and your spacing's a little off. When you see the whole thing all put together, you just want the feeling of it being a pattern. It's okay if it looks handmade and a little bit imperfect. So just keep working around your bowl until you have the whole thing filled.
Once you finish the dots, you want to make sure that it's good and dry, or else you'll just smudge it like we did. And now it's time for color. And you can really choose any color that you want. It's up to you. It's your artistic discretion. But we chose yellow to kind of go with our yellow and black theme on this bowl. But make sure you add enough water to the paint and allows it to glide on the yellow pretty evenly onto the bowl. Now, don't worry about being absolutely perfect because you're going to go in with black outlines to really articulate the shape. So it's going to cover up a lot of the imperfections. Now, once you finish with the fruit and filling that in, then we will transition on working on the lower half, the lower part of the bowl. If you decide to switch colors, make sure you switch out the water because the water can tint whatever color that you use. We decided to stick with yellow, but you might choose blue. As far as the brush, we use a large flat brush and making sure that we add water to the paint, and that way we kind of walk it around the bowl filling in the lower half.
After you've finished painting all the shapes and the base of your bowl with all the colors that you want, it's time to do the line work. You want to use this fine point brush in your set and dip it in a little bit of water and use the black paint to do all your lines. You should be able to see the graphite transfer that you did earlier through the paint, since this yellow paint and all the paint is a little bit transparent and we used a little bit of water to put it on. You can still see all your line work through. So you're going to just go over with that black line brush all the spots that you did the graphite drawing earlier. This is what's really going to give it this nice poster quality that's very quintessentially pop art. By outlining all the shapes and by putting a line around the middle of the bowl, it really defines all the spaces and gives it that flat pop design quality. To keep a nice fluid black line as you're painting, remember to keep refilling and dipping your brush in the water. Once all your line work and your shapes are painted on the outside, you have the option to use a single color to paint the inside of the bowl. This is a great way to have a nice pop of color and a contrasting color. You want to make sure you have clean water, so change out your water, your big flat brush, and then choose a color and mix what you want to go on the inside of the bowl. I keep putting a lot of water in my brush because it helps move that paint around more fluidly. So I start at the bottom, keep refilling that brush because you're covering a lot of space. And then do all the sides, saving that top rim of the bowl as your last step, using the shape of the bowl to guide your final line to make it nice and crisp. Now let it dry and enjoy your handiwork.
The paint we use today is not meant to be eaten off of, or washed for that matter. So put it someplace just to enjoy as decoration in your home.
Thank you to our silver sponsors, Cargill Cares, Pleasant Mattress, Premier Valley Bank, Valley Children's Healthcare, and Kaiser Permanente. Thank you to our bronze sponsors, EECU, Gus and Grady Bonner, Pacific Western Bank, The Wine Group, McCaffrey Home Mortgage, Judy Davis, and Herb Morgenstern, Thermo King. And remember, you can become a monthly sustaining donor. Donate now so everyone can have a full bowl tonight.